few years, and that's what we're trying to work. I'm trying to work with him on processing the Clementine data set for Orbiter as well. These maps are better than Celestia, as I understand it. Okay, let's just go ahead into Mars orbit. This one is not a pre-recorded flight, so.
Going, I've got a little. This is from Orbiter. Well, anyway, that's a little video clip from Orbiter. And one thing about the video clips, because of to keep the file sizes manageable so I could fit everything on one CD, the video files, I sampled them at 5 frames per second. So some of them will look a little bit jerky. That's not Orbiter, that's just the video. And the same thing, some of them look a little jaggy, because they're scaled to fit in PowerPoint. But if you attended the talk by Cyrus and Seth earlier, and also some of my static screenshots, you'll see that the graphics from Orbiter are really quite solid. So I'm going to give a little bit of background on how this talk came to be, talk a bit about Orbiter and how you can model space systems in Orbiter, a brief background on the Mars for Less mission that we chose to use as a demonstration for this, and then I'll focus on a couple of the specific modeling issues that we decided to work with, the propulsion modeling, tether systems, and EDL, entry, descent, and landing. And I'll try to leave a little time for questions. So the idea here is we believe that building a virtual prototype of a human Mars mission in a suitable flight simulator could have a lot of advantages to supplement conventional planning and analysis methods. And Orbiter is an excellent tool for this. It's been used, as Seth and Cyrus showed, to model many historical and current and even fictional spacecraft and systems. And the nice thing is you can do this virtual prototyping even at the preliminary analysis stage of a mission, because it's based on relatively simple 3D models, configuration files, and the actual parameters, things like thrust and principal moments of inertia and so forth. So since I'm involved with the Mars Drive Consortium, the Mars for Less mission seemed like a good test bed for this, so we decided a few months ago to go after this. So I hope this paper will give you an idea about that. First of all, Orbiter is a real-time spaceflight simulator. It features atmospheric flight, orbital mechanics, capability for interplanetary missions. You can do rendezvous, docking. It's pretty detailed. The physics, the guy who wrote it, Martin Schweiger, who makes it available as freeware, was really looking to make an educational application for physics. And along the way, he built a really great spaceflight simulator with some excellent graphics thrown in to keep it interesting. The nice thing for this purpose is the API, or the open architecture, which allows you to define completely new spacecraft, instruments, autopilots, even planetary surfaces, planetary atmospheres. And amazingly enough, even though the quality is comparable in every way to commercial, say, flight simulator software, Orbiter and all of the add-ons are completely free. So here's some sample graphics showing the ISS and the CEV. There's a futuristic spacecraft that's just rendezvoused with Phobos. A couple of shots from the Apollo add-on, which is amazing. All the switches in the LEM, it's just amazing. And of course the shuttle, which is a lot of fun to fly and try to land on the runway. I've landed, but not necessarily on the runway. And I'm a private pilot, so. Anyway, to model space systems in Orbiter, you make use of the open architecture. You start with a 3D graphic model. And in fact, many of the people who work with Orbiter developing add-ons even use free tools for 3D modeling. So you don't need a CAD program. It's fairly simple 3D modelers. And then you can build in more detail and very quickly bring those spacecraft and systems into Orbiter, into the Orbiter solar system, and fly them. It's really fun. Now, Mars for Less is basically a modular mission plan. One thing I forgot to say when I said real time, people worry about that, say, 6 months to Mars. I'm not sure I want to sit there for 6 months. It actually has time acceleration from 10% to 100,000 times real time. So you can do a 6-month Mars mission in about an hour with reasonable time acceleration. So Mars for Less is a plan that Grant Bonin has presented in a couple of papers over the last couple of years, essentially a modular variation of Mars Direct. And I just want to say, Dr. Zubrin slammed the idea of orbital rendezvous to assemble a Mars mission pretty hard. And we certainly agree. If a heavy lift launch vehicle is available, and if everything else lines up and it goes right, great, let's do it that way. But if the stars are not aligned, if that vehicle is delayed, or God forbid there's an accident or whatever, or a change of national will or priority, the possibility of going to Mars still exists. And if you do the engineering right, we feel it can be done with medium lift vehicles. It's got problems, but they're not insurmountable. So it's really just mostly good engineering. And it's very hard. So the modules are designed to be assembled in orbit with minimal EVA support. Now, there would be some EVA support needed. It would take 6 medium lift launches per vehicle, and there are 2 vehicles, nominally the ERV and called the MTSV. And it's the typical Mars Direct profile with the ERV going without a crew to Mars to set up the fuel production and so forth. So here's diagrams of the Earth return vehicle and the Mars transfer and surface vehicle showing the spacecraft and the 4 booster modules, which we dubbed Proteus, or at least my propulsion team called it Proteus. My propulsion team is Andy over in the UK. He designed it, so he got to name it. So there are 4 propulsion modules, and there's a couple of labeled diagrams there showing the parts of these things. Now, the orbital assembly. The way I see it, there would be 2 aspects of this. For the actual crew vehicles being launched in 2 25-ton modules, they're going to have to be connected pretty darn well. I mean, you got pipes, you got wires, you got, structures and so forth. My guess is the complexity of that is going to require astronauts on site. But it can be designed so it can be done with, say, support from a CEV. It doesn't need to be done at the space station. You can't really get there anyway. But so it can be done with a sort of tug support, docking type things with some EVA support. And then for the propulsion modules, we foresee that these could be designed pretty much, you don't have life support. You've got relatively simple interfaces between these. These could be designed for remote control, semi-autonomous rendezvous and docking type of assembly. Now, that hasn't been done with things this large, but we don't feel that that's insurmountable. Here's a video showing what this might look like. Again, this is captured in Orbiter. You can see here why I'm not an astronaut. That was kind of a late correction on the lineup for the docking there, but, it's okay. Yeah? No, I used a third party too. I used Camtasia, actually, but you can use lots of different things. It has a flight recorder feature which records missions for playback, which is, but for this, I didn't want to do that because I wanted to have more control over the views and be able to embed it in PowerPoint. So anyway, it gets lined up and docked. Now, the spacecraft modeling. These are fairly complex spacecraft. They have a lot of parts. They have stages. They have deployable shields. They have parachutes. They have antennas. All of this stuff can be modeled in Orbiter. It gets a little complicated, but again, it's a very modular design in the software as well. So we set it up so we could simulate the orbital assembly, the deployable features, and the amazing thing is, although there are custom programming features that you can use to operate everything, you don't have to do that. We use something called the Spacecraft DLL, which is an add-on that allows you to put in all of the the aerodynamics, the propulsion staging, principal moments of inertia, fuel, everything, gimbal, engine gimbaling if that's appropriate, all through text files, so that that information is then loaded into Orbiter. As an example of the spacecraft modeling, here's the ERV. It started out as a fairly complex 3D model, and with texturing and added with animated features such as heat shield and, although it's not shown, deployable solar panels and antennas and so forth. Now, and that was Mark Paton, was the spacecraft and EDL team. So I had this, it's a very lean organization. Spacecraft, EDL, that's Mark. Propulsion, Mars guidance, that's Andy. And I was basically test flight, basically everything else, and writing the paper. Andy is in England, and he's particularly keen on the Ariane 5, and there was a very nice model of the Ariane 5 that was available for modification. So we chose that as our nominal vehicle, although you could use any launch vehicle that can put 25 tons into low Earth assembly orbit. So let's see what that... Okay, and here's some other shots of that, including the middle one shows, and the right one shows an expanded fairing, which we ended up not using. But as you'll see, some of these spacecraft look a little tall and narrow, and that may be okay. And Grant has worked out the volumes, and he assures me it's plenty of room, but it seems a little tight to live in for 3 or 4 years. So we would, in a second generation thing, I think we would probably expand the HAB module somewhat. That's true. But, okay. So let's launch the Ariane. Yes, this is Kourou. And that's a French countdown. Don't hear that every day. And this thing's got stickers all over it, every country in the world, Mars Drive Consortium, ESA, NASA, everybody. I tried to do kind of a matrix thing here, a little slow motion. I should have spun it around, but that'll be the next version. Yeah. Yeah, okay, and then the fairing is gone, and okay, now the upper stage. Now this, we assumed a pretty maneuverable upper stage that would be able to position you for docking. And here we turn around and find out that the lineup's not exactly just there yet. But okay, we'll back up and start again. Here's the Proteus stage with some labeling. You can see it's got docking pins. The uppermost stage would have a tether spool. This would be the spool of material that would be used to attach to the HAB to spin it for artificial G. Andy did upgrade the specs a little bit on this. He used an engine called the Vinci, which has been tested by ESA. Has a little more thrust than what was specified in the original paper. And you'd need to deliver 4 of these to orbit, and Grant really has worked out and talked about the issues of boil off and the timing of the assembly and so forth. And it does seem to be doable. So once you get everything in orbit, you've now got to do your TMI at the right time and date. And it's not a simple burn because you've got 4 stages. So basically at successive periapses, you would do a burn that would be calculated to get you onto your Mars trajectory. And we used a tool that one of the add-on developers created called Interplanetary MFD, which is amazing. It's used for flight planning and guidance, and it's very accurate. It guides you right to the entry window, and you can land where you want to land. It's just amazing what people do in their spare time. Now, we got to get the crew up there, because this stuff launches without the crew. So you could use various things, whatever might be available at the time, possibly T-Space, possibly the SpaceX Dragon. Is there a new glass here? Oops. But we decided to use the CEV and the Ares 1, since we had an orbiter model available of this. So let's see what that looks like. That's English. And see, it didn't fall apart. See, it's a tall, long, skinny rocket, but it's fine. So then, the CEV gets there, and it is a little embarrassing, Grant, that the CEV is fatter than the HAB. I think we really ought to fatten the HAB up a little bit. Okay. Well, anyway, I wouldn't live in it for 4 years, I'll tell you that. But another thing, the part that I worked on was the tethers. Again, it's amazing. The orbiter community, there's people that are interested in all kinds of stuff, and they've developed. One guy has already got a space elevator in orbiter. I mean, it's just amazing. But there's one person developed a tether add-on that you can use for various types of things. It's really quite interesting. The physics of tethers are implemented in this. And I played around with it, using it as a possible assistance for orbital assembly, where you could have little robotic pods, which I think they have some of these types of things being tested on the ISS now or in the future, which would be like a camera robot, which might even be able to, say, grab your tethers and attach them to appropriate points, so that instead of slamming into the other part of the vehicle with your thrusters, maybe you'd use tethers to kind of gently pull the parts together. So that actually works, and I tried that. I don't have a video of that, but I do have a video of the, I have a video of the tether. Now the tether is not as long as it would be for G purposes. In fact, Grant said that for 0.4 G with the masses and with the systems that we have, it would be about 1.5 kilometers at 2 RPM. But I didn't make it that long just because I wanted to be able to see both vehicles spinning. So now this is, to me, the amazing part, because this guy in England, Mark Paton, who he's a smart guy, just finished his PhD in planetary sciences. He really ran with the spacecraft and the EDL modeling. And we wanted to simulate precision EDL because we had an add-on for ballast Dow, which we took the liberty of moving to a different place on Mars, which you can't do in real life, I understand, but in the simulator you can. So he was entering at a certain point, and he just moved the valley under where he was landing. And that's a little bit, that's cheating a little bit, I know. But still, in principle, he could have landed anywhere. So in orbiter, we actually aero capture into the Mars parking orbit using the atmospheric model, and then he set up precision EDL to land at the site where we've already landed the ERV. And I got a video, and this is a little bit longer than the videos, other ones, but I think it's kind of cool. We used an inflatable aero shield, which works in orbiter. I'm not sure if it's going to work in real life, but so actually we used two sets. He ended up using two sets of chutes, because when he did flight testing, he found that with just one chute, the chute deployment actually gave 5G to the crew. Okay, here now the thrusters are, the rockets are firing. It looks bad. Don't worry, though. This is yeah. Neil's like, I got it. Yeah. Whoa. That's a virtual pilot's view there. You can see the thrusters firing pretty vigorously there. Now, I showed this to my wife. Wait, listen, we've actually got some audio on this. You hear the wind?
Just barely.
Yeah.
There it is.
My wife said it looked like a can of bug spray, spraying the... Said, yeah, well, months of work to... Oh, but look, but check out the particle effects. I love that. Yeah, that was good. We're definitely going to fatten up the spacecraft. Okay, so Mark put this slide together showing we actually went through about 10 generations on the ERV model because we had issues like obstruction of the solar panels by the aero shield and integration onto the propulsion and thermal issues, and so and then propulsive deceleration and then the parachute issues. And Mark actually did extensive flight testing, and this is an amazing thing. You can actually gather data. There's a feature called the Flight Recorder MFD, and you can collect all kinds of flight data. It's like a black box for your simulator. And here it shows the first problem he ran into was getting the aero shield to separate from the vehicle properly, and he had to actually use some thruster deceleration to get it to separate. And so you can actually see the two, where the two things separate, and so that's actual captured data. And here, he found that the G's were really not bad on the hypersonic deceleration, but when he deployed a single 30-meter chute, it gave the crew 5 G's, which we felt after 6 months in reduced gravity that might hurt. So he said, well, what can I do about, so he actually added a second chute. He added a 15-meter chute that deploys at 900 meters per second, and then deployed the 30-meter chute at 600 meters per second, and he test flew that, and he found that the maximum G to the crew was 3. So that was more tolerable. And then here's where the rocket engines fire. It's a little not too bad there. And then Andy pointed out, you forgot to talk about going home. We do bring the crew. This is not a one-way mission. We bring them home. So this is the ERV launching and then going into a parking orbit and aerobraking and orbiting there over Florida. So this provides, Orbiter gives you an accurate, robust, and very versatile environment for virtual prototyping of some phases of space missions. You can capture data from missions. You get excellent visualization and educational benefit from this. Because it's based on simple 3D models, you can actually do this type of thing quite early in the design process, and you don't have to have a detailed CAD model. You just have sort of a shell of a model, and then you put in the parameters that describe the physical properties. The Mars for Less reference mission is quite a complex mission. It provided a real challenging test for this, and we think it came off pretty well, even though we ended up with a tall, skinny spacecraft. But I used to be tall and skinny. It's not the worst thing. Does anybody have any questions? Darn. Thank you. Yep, and we are going to release this as an add-on to the public. Basically, the tradition is, the requirement of the license, if you use Orbiter, you aren't allowed to sell anything from it or for it. That's the condition of the author. You don't have to release, you can develop add-ons for your own personal use, but if you release it, it has to be free. So we'll be releasing this, I would say, probably in a month or so when we finish this up so people can play with it. And we did want to credit quite a few people who helped us, mostly Dr. Martin Schweiger himself for creating this and sharing it, and the Orbiter community and the members of the Mars Drive Consortium who inspired and helped us with this, and the various add-on makers. I mean, this is the thing. We didn't have to build all this ourselves. We were able to make use of a lot of existing infrastructure, whether it's the Kourou base or the Ariane 5 or the Ares 1 launcher, the autopilot, which was amazing. And there's a lot of resources. And here's some contact information. If the slides for this are actually already online at this site, virtualspaceflight.com. You can go there and get the slides for the paper. And you can get Orbiter itself at orbitersim.com. And there's a few other things. And I did write a tutorial for Orbiter, the second edition of it. I don't know if I say something. It's such an easy program to learn. I'm not really saying that, but the tutorial is only 180 pages. That sounds kind of bad, except that there's a lot of stuff about add-ons and background about orbital mechanics and stuff. You can really learn to fly Orbiter in the first 3 chapters of that book. So again, that's a free download from this site right here. And if anybody, I have a few copies of the paper and the slides with me if anyone's interested in having a copy of that. So, questions? Thank you. Yeah. Yes.
So you're on your ERB return trip, you're aerobraking in the low Earth orbit first instead of a direct return?
Correct. We're aerobraking into Earth orbit and figuring that we would have a crew vehicle of some sort rendezvous with it, or possibly do an entry from that. We actually haven't worked that part out too much, and in fact, we don't have complete buy-in from everybody on using the biconic shape for the ERV.
We explored that as well.
Yeah, so
we felt it was too heavy for a direct.
it could be. So, but the thing is, part of the reason, actually, my main reason was for videos and things. I wanted to have 2 distinct-looking spacecraft. So, in a simulator, you can think like that. In real life, you'd have to say, well, what will really work? So, yeah.
I don't know what to say, but a couple months back, I was invited out to the library to speak to a summer program,
Mm-hmm.
and they wanted us to show kids what it felt like to be inside a CED. So I said, okay, let's put 4 chairs on the ground, and we'll pop some kids in it, and I did.
Yeah.
And then we held a banner across the top of them so we could create that enclosed, simulated
Yeah.
building. I said, okay, kids, now that you're in the CED, you have to exercise, go to the bathroom, and do everything else in here for about 6 months. And they sat there, and the first one said, we do? How do you do that? And then they asked all kinds of questions from that position.
Yeah.
So it kind of gave them that feeling. And they said, do astronauts really do this stuff up there? And I said, yeah, they do. And
Yeah. But 6, yeah.
I was just,
Yeah. Just 6, yeah.
really what they do is they get inside Soyuz, and I put a picture of Soyuz up there and show them that closed cramped condition. I said, for 2 days to station in this configuration, in their suits. And they said, how do they really go to the potty?
Yeah.
Really.
So you're really inspiring the kids to want to go into space, it sounds like.
This is the thing. I said, is there anybody in here that really wants to be an astronaut now? And about 6 of them, just about 6 kids out of 46. Yeah, I want to do that.
Okay.
So, I mean,
Well, there's actually an Orbiter user, and I can't remember his screen name. If you go to the Orbiter forum, you can find he's a an elementary school teacher, or maybe junior high, in Quebec, in the province of Quebec, and he actually set up an orbiter cockpit in his classroom where he put up panels and so forth, and he has chairs, not just chairs, he got the chairs from somewhere. He got a lot of donations of things. And he set up a projector for the outside, and he has 2 keyboards set up, and he has joysticks and whatever, and the kids, they plan missions, and they actually fly the missions in orbiter. And he basically ties this into his science lessons. And
How about doing something like this in a classroom? I mean, this kind of imagery, for kids to experience. I really think this has some potential for that, because
yeah,
putting this in front of kids would be huge.
yeah.
They need to experience this.
I agree, and I've actually been. That's part of the reason I'm involved with this educational outreach with Mars Drive, and the reason I wrote that book, Go Play in Space, which I'd be happy to. Well, I don't have I've only got one hard copy of it with me, but
I'll give you my card.
yeah, give me your card, and
I'll
I.
get that, because I
Yeah,
like to share that with some of the kids, some of the people in Houston, to give that to them.
that would be awesome. Yes, sir.
I do basically a NASA update lecture on the solar system disaster this year, but I was curious before that.
Okay, sure.
And one of the last slides in my thing is called Beyond Their Astronaut, and it comes to this system and Encyclopedia Astronautica, which I use extensively
Yeah.
in my Knuckle Prize paper, and all the other resources that are out there that people don't realize that, you can use the internet for something other than using porn.
Yes.
You can use it to actually enhance
Right.
your
Yeah, but don't mention that, to the kids, because they say, "Wait, what was that last thing you said?"
You didn't say that.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'd like to talk with you after the thing, because I'm signing up for the Solar System Ambassador Program next month as soon as it opens again. So, thanks everybody.